Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Nelson. Here's a look at what's going on this week in the news. We begin with news from the Vatican. From a death sentence and imprisonment in a Sudanese jail to the Vatican, Meriam Ibrahim, who had been found guilty of apostasy for marrying a Christian, met with Pope Francis on July 24th. Rome Reports has all the details.
Up until recently, she faced the death penalty for being Christian. But now, just months later, the Sudanese woman who made international headlines got to meet Pope Francis, accompanied by her husband and 2 children. Meriam Ibrahim was sentenced to death back in May, convicted of converting to Christianity. Before heading off to the U.S., she traveled to Rome on Thursday, where she met with Pope Francis. As the Pope met Maya, the baby girl who was born in prison, he thanked Meriam for her testimony of faith. The young mother took a flight from Sudan's capital to Rome. Upon arrival, she was welcomed by several Italian authorities. While speaking with the Pope, she and her husband shared the living nightmare they experienced as a family. A relative of hers accused her of marrying a Christian. As a result, on May 15th, she was arrested and sentenced to death by hanging. At the time, she was 8 months pregnant. In prison, she gave birth to her baby girl with her legs still chained. After an international outcry, she was released. But it's something that still brings tears to their eyes. Out of respect, the Pope asked the cameraman to leave the room. The Pope also greeted the Italian authorities who accompanied the family to the Vatican. As a gift, he gave the young couple rosaries, and he walked them to the door of his residence in Gaza, Santa Marta. Visibly moved, the Pope thanked the family once again for their visit, and above all else, for their testimony of faith.
Ibrahim joined the Catholic Church shortly before she married in 2011. She was later convicted of apostasy and sentenced to death by hanging. Ibrahim was scheduled to be in Rome for a few days before heading to the U.S. with her family. In news from around the world, as the violence continues in the Middle East, 2 priests on either side of the Gaza border are trying to help their small communities confront the realities of war. In Gaza, Institute of the Incarnate Word Father Jorge Hernandez wrote on an entry on his community's Facebook page that following the incursion of Israeli troops July 17th, more parishioners have been contacting him for help to overcome their fears and stress caused by the bombings. He said that even though he can't assist people materially, he's able to be with them as a source of comfort, knowing that someone was accompanying them in their suffering. In the Israeli city of Beersheba, some 26 miles away, Father Evangeli Salvatierra of the small community of Hebrew-speaking Catholics said that after Hamas missiles were intercepted by the Israeli Iron Dome defense system, members of his parish are afraid to leave their homes. Father Salvatierra said that the only thing he can do is be there and listen to those who ask for his spiritual support. Father Salvatierra says when the community gathers to pray, they do not speak politics. He said they pray for all the suffering on both sides. In news now from around the country, after Catholic Charities of Baltimore announced July 17th that the organization would house unaccompanied immigrant children at a Baltimore area facility, Executive Director William McCarthy says the response has been mostly supportive. McCarthy was among Maryland religious leaders. Governor Martin O'Malley called to Annapolis recently to discuss the state's response to the Central American children and youths who have crossed the U.S.-Mexico border illegally without parents or guardians. Catholic Charities announced in a memo to staff members that it was preparing a federal proposal to house up to 50 immigrant children and youths. Grant applications to house the minors are due August 5th to the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Refugee Resettlement. The Pew Research Center estimates that more than 57,500 unaccompanied children and youths crossed the border illegally between October 1st, 2013 and June 30th, 2014. In news now from the Vatican, the Pontifical Council for the New Evangelization will hold a conference on Pope Francis's first apostolic exhortation, Evangeli Gaudium. Rome Reports spoke with the Council's president about the upcoming conference.
Pope Francis presented the foundation of his papacy in his first apostolic exhortation titled Evangeli Gaudium. Among other things, he calls for a missionary church that goes out and encounters the most marginalized members of society. And now, to develop a clear pastoral action plan, this Vatican department will host a global conference precisely on this very topic.
Innanzitutto l'incontro vuole essere
First off, the meeting will be an exchange of experiences on what is already being done on a pastoral level. But above all, it aims to establish common elements that can help in the church's pastoral work, bringing joy to this encounter with Jesus Christ.
The international meeting will take place from September 18th to the 20th in the Vatican. The 3-day program will highlight the Church's missionary role, especially in working with the poor and the marginalized. Successful ways to preach the gospel in today's world will also be discussed.
le nostre comunità si sono
Our communities are too bureaucratized. They are no longer welcoming communities capable of expressing a life of communion as it should do so. I think it's our duty to change it back, but especially those of us responsible for the Christian communities.
On the second day, participants will meet with Pope Francis himself. Organizers expect approximately 1,500 participants, including bishops, priests, consecrated men, women, and lay people. In fact, interest in the meeting has been so overwhelming that they were forced to limit the number of attendees.
And finally in the news, several news sources have reported that the Obama administration has filed a brief with the 10th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Denver, indicating it plans to develop an alternative for religious nonprofit employers to opt out of providing federally mandated contraceptives they object to, including in their employee health care coverage. Currently, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services mandate includes a narrow exemption for some religious employers that fit certain criteria. For those employers who don't fit the exemption, they need to fill out a form which directs a third party to provide the contested coverage. But many religious employers argue that even filling out the form makes them complicit in providing coverage they find objectionable. According to an Associated Press story, the alternative the Obama administration said it plans to draft would allow these employers to opt out without having to submit the form. Well, that is all the information we have for you this time. I'm Kevin Elson. Don't forget, you can keep up to date on Catholic news throughout the week. Catholic Newsbreak right here on the Catholic TV Network.